Hello, hello, hello. Hi, how is everyone doing? How are we mentally, physically, and all of that? Thank you so much for joining us again on our one voice campaign. And today we're going to be talking to Sam. She's going to be sharing a bit of her story. We're going to be talking about gaslighting. So before we start, I just want to ask everyone to please share this video because this topic is so important. We've had so much feedback with regards to this particular live, and we really cannot wait to share what Sam's going to share because it's very intriguing. Before actually Sam told me her story, I had not really heard about gaslighting. Yeah, I know. Um, so I was very fresh when it came to this, and I had to literally go and research about it because I didn't know anything about it. And when she was talking about it, I was like, "Whoa, is that like a really weird thing?" I didn't know anything about that. Hi, Twin. Oh, that's lovely lady in the States. She's under
Oh,
healing hands, but she's Nigeria. I hope I pronounced your name right because I always pronounce it wrong. She always reminds me to do that. Yeah, so I'd never heard about this topic before, so I went to research and look it up, and I found it to be very intriguing. Yeah, and decided to have Sam on, and Sam very nicely agreed to come on. So, if this is the first time you're watching this, we've been running a One Voice campaign, and with the One Voice campaign, we're sharing women's stories, and you can send your story via stories at HerStoryMatters.com, or you can DM us your picture and a short snippet of what you think about female empowerment, because I think it's very important to empower females, and also to focus on the girl child. So yeah, that's what we're currently doing, and we are loving it. We've had so much response and so much support, and I just want to thank every single person who's been sharing our videos, every single person who's been commenting and giving us feedback and everything else. We really appreciate you. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. And yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you for those who are watching. If you can tell me where you're watching from, so we can be able to know our reach. We have an idea of where people are tuning in from, but it would really help us to kind of like have an idea of where you're tuning in from. And so before we start, I'm going to talk about gaslighting. It's the very first time I had heard about it. And so, gaslighting is a tactic in which a person or entity, in order to gain more power, makes a victim question their reality. It works much better than you may think. Anyone is susceptible to gaslighting, and it is a common abusers, dictators, narcissists, and cult leaders. It is done slowly. Victim doesn't realize how much they've been brainwashed. For example, in the movie Gaslight 1944, I actually went and watched that movie as well. Manipulates his wife to the point where she thinks she is losing her mind. So I know this is a very common thing because they were showing that some people actually experience the gaslighting before actual domestic abuse. So it's going to be very interesting to hear Sam's story. And after Sam, we're going to hear from our counselor, who's going to kind of like help those who've gone through it to kind of like understand more about it and to help them kind of like figure out and work out how best to be able to kind of like recover. So I can see Ashley, he's joined from London. Hi, Ash. Oh my gosh, I miss you guys so much. Okay, so Sam and Ash do a class called Smash, and they're fitness instructors and they are amazing. So that's how I met Sam. I went to their class, and the class was really tough and I was at my heaviest, I'm not gonna lie, but they were so lovely, they were so amazing, and they helped me feel welcome, and they made me do so many burpees, and I think I lost so much weight the first day that I went there because they love burpees. So I'm just gonna let Sam tell you a bit about Smash, and we're gonna put Smash details underneath. So they do workouts on Zoom, which are amazing. You can do the workouts in your living room, and all they ask is for a donation, obviously, because they're doing it for you on Zoom. You don't have to kind of like go to the gym or anything else. And we know with COVID, people have been affected and everything else, and fitness instructors have to work different. So they also do PT sessions. So you can, contact Sam. I'm going to put her details down there, and you're going to be able to get in touch with her and just really get in touch and figure out how you guys are going to do it. But then I would encourage you, we're going to put their website for Smash as well, and you can sign up to their newsletters, and that's how you're going to get information for Zoom. But I'm going to let Sam tell us more about Smash, why she started it, and something else as well. They do mindfulness, which I really love. It's the first time I've ever been to any class in all the years I've been training where they do mindfulness after the workout. So you feel so good after. You're not just, sweating and everything, but you get centered, and it's really holistic in that sense, because everyone, there's different abilities in the class, and they're very, very, very mindful over everyone. So it's not a class you go in and, if you can't do your burpee, there's something else that you can do. So let's Sam talk about Smash, and then she can tell us about herself and her early life before we go into gaslighting. Sam, over to you.
So yeah, it sounds like we're kind of obsessed with burpees, but there are classes where we don't do them in the whole class as well. But burpees are actually really good because they're working the whole body. It's a really good one to raise the heart rate. But yeah, Smash, we created 3 years ago. We're coming up to our 3-year anniversary next week, actually. And Ash has been in the fitness industry for years and years and years, about 15 years. And I've been a personal trainer for around 5 or 6 years now. And when we met in a fitness first club in Angel, and we realized we were both into mindfulness. We both really enjoyed the way that it made us feel in our mind, but we also enjoyed working out. But we've never really subscribed to the idea that you've got to go as hard as you can until you pass out or throw up, and you shouldn't give up calories or anything like that. So we created these classes as almost an antidote to that, as a way to bring people together, to encourage you, like you said, no matter your ability, to do what you can. And what we focus on in Smash is moving for health, health in your body as well as health in your mind. The mindfulness we try and put throughout the class, we always start with an affirmation. And on the Zoom classes in particular, we've got a theme throughout each one, where we're trying to add that little bit of extra mindfulness in there. So for example, yesterday we had like different gratitude affirmations all the way through, and you'll never hear beach body, you'll never hear weight loss. I did a lot of studying last year about how social media affects us and how we feel about our bodies. And so what we do with Smash is to make sure that you feel happy in your body as much as you can. So rather than feeling like you have to do it for a particular reason. So yeah, 3 years. We started in the gym, like I said, and then with lockdown, it's forced us to go online, which is something that we've been wanting to do for a little while, and it's going really well. We're really enjoying, and we get so much amazing feedback from it. We've built an amazing, strong community of all different ages as well. We've got parents and grandparents coming as well, which is so nice to see.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing something from it as well. But yeah, we all came.
I kind of like just wanted you to kind of like talk about Smash, and I think that's really beautiful because it embodies what you guys believe in, and that's why I enjoy it so much. The atmosphere is so good. Like there's all abilities in the same room, which you rarely find in most classes, and I think that's why people keep coming back and recommending their friends, because it's just an atmosphere where you get so much encouragement, and no one really talks about abs or I've never had that like six pack or whatever. I've never had those words in the class, so it kind of like makes it fun, and you're not focusing so much on how you look. And I just wanted to get that out there, because sometimes you go into a class and you just feel so awful, and you don't want to go back because it's all about your physique. It's not really about your holistic health and your mind. So I want you to tell us about yourself. Sam has shared her other story on the magazine before, so we're going to put the link on the magazine on her story, so you can see more of a detailed story of her background, but she's going to just tell us a little bit about her early life and her influences, and then we're going to get into the meat of the story.
So, yeah, I grew up in Manchester, and my dad is Indian, my mum's English. Got one brother. And when I was in Manchester, I left when I was about 19, just before I was 19. I kind of started drinking very heavily. So I had some not very nice friends when I was there. I can't pinpoint, and there's not much need to pinpoint exactly why I started drinking a lot, but I did. And then when I moved away, the drinking sort of followed me. And then I met my old ex that I was together with for about 10 years, really lovely guy, but I was drinking a lot while I was with him. And so eventually, which was 11 years ago, I came to my rock bottom, which is when I stopped drinking. And I'm smiling about it because it isn't like now, it's not a big deal anymore. At the time, I was a completely different person, very different in a mental space and a physical space as well. So yeah, it was 2009, and I gave up drinking, and I stayed with my partner at the time, and then we kind of grew apart as I grew in myself. So I started experiencing life, started really loving everything about life. I did change my addiction from alcohol to the gym. So I used to be a lot larger, so I was over 100 kilos, and I dropped down from like a size 20 to about a size 8. But my mental space hadn't completely healed from everything that I'd gone through. So actually, when I left my partner and when I sort of went traveling and got happier in my mind, I then increased my weight. But I always call them happy pounds, because I don't think my body is ever meant to be a size 8, and it fluctuates as everyone's does. I go up and down. But now I'm happier at a regular way, as people might call it. People might call it different things, but the main thing is being happy in myself. So yeah, 11 years ago, I gave up alcohol. When I left him, I was single for about 5 years. Started focusing really on myself. Started working in the gym, met Ash, built this amazing business. Yeah, I think that's kind of a nutshell, a very, very, very short version of the story.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of like talk about your relationship. So I know the relationship that you had was very challenging in different ways. So can you just tell us about like the relationship and kind of like emotionally where you were during this relationship?
So the gaslighting one, or the previous?
Yes, the gaslighting one.
Okay, so that one, yeah, that was it. I say, I think a couple of years ago, I started dating a guy, and it was one of those things where my gut instinct was that he wasn't someone that I wanted to spend loads of time with, but he was interesting, and it was nice for his company. He was very, very complimentary, and although I've practiced mindfulness for a while now, and I don't feel like I need validation from people to tell me how amazing I am, he made me feel that a little bit better almost. So he boosted my confidence quite a lot, especially at the beginning. And yeah, there was a lot of challenges in that he could be quite intense sometimes, and I hadn't really realized it at the time, but we kind of broke up a few times, but he sort of convinced me that I was wrong to do that, and that actually we were meant to be together. So a lot of the time I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. So yeah, throughout the relationship, it was me feeling like I was being a bit maybe judgmental of him, and that maybe I should give it a go, and that maybe it was what I wanted and what I needed, when in fact actually I didn't need it.
Yeah. I think we've lost you there.
Oh no.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, good.
So I think one of the things is when I was really looking at gaslighting, what I saw was that the people who actually do it are very manipulative. So it's kind of like when I was looking at it, they were actually saying that even the strongest people actually go through it. And I would just kind of like want to know emotionally what you were thinking, what went through your mind when, stuff would happen, or just give us an example of something that would happen and kind of like how you handled it so that we can get a deeper idea on like what was going on in the relationship.
So, like I was saying, when we broke up throughout, it was usually that things were quite intense, or that I thought, no, I don't need you in my life, and I don't want this relationship. And most of the time, it was around when I would go away, maybe like go on holiday, or I'd go to visit friends and be away for the weekend, or like Glastonbury, I went away for a week, and a friend's wedding, and things would feel a little bit different whenever I'd come back. And first couple of times that happened, there would be a reason that an argument would start, and I would always question myself, like how it started, because he would convince me that I was in the wrong somehow, or that I was being judgmental somehow. And I've got a terrible short-term memory anyway. So whenever that would happen, I would get really confused and wonder what did I say wrong, or he might react to something and I would think, oh no, I've said something really bad. Whereas in the normal cycle of the relationship, it was fine. And so when it came to like later on, when I was going to the wedding and when I was going to Glastonbury, I felt like I had to make extra effort to show him love. And while I was away every day, I would make sure I'd message extra, because he pointed out that I was different whenever I'd gone away, which I didn't think I was. So I'd come back from those things and really think, okay, no, I need to be as loving as possible. And I actually did question whether I was going a bit crazy, because I'd come back, and especially I think the last time I went away while we were together was to Glastonbury, and I'd got back, and he was really excited to see me again, but then he sort of changed his mind at the last minute, and I was really hurt and really disappointed, but I tried not, I hid that from him because I didn't want to make him feel bad for how he'd made me feel, because I didn't want any reason for him to have an argument with me. And then a few days later, sort of, I really don't remember exactly, but he'd convinced me, that I was again being judgmental, or that I was being wrong. And so in the end, I'd say, no, I don't want to be with you. And so that was the last time that I was as strong as I could be. And I said, right, that's it. I don't want to be with you anymore, and let's leave it. So we broke up that time for a good month. But then every time we did, there was always a pattern where he'd give it a week of not saying anything. Then he'd come back in and say some really nice things, and remind me how lovely he could be, and how much he missed me, and complimenting me and telling me how amazing I am. So that last time was when I was extra strong, and I gave it a few weeks, and then I started seeing him. Up until that point, we were in, sorry, I'm jumping from bit to bit, but we're in this little kind of bubble before that point, where we would only see each other like at my house, or like just together. We would never integrate with friends. We would never go out on dates or anything like that. We'd like chill at home, eat some food, watch movies and things like that. It would all be very small bubble, like we wouldn't let anyone else in. And we always thought we were very, very open with each other. I always felt like I could trust him. I was really honored that he would share certain things with me, because he would talk a lot about himself and his past. He had a sort of similar story to me, but definitely not, where he'd been sober for a couple of years. And so I was very honored with, how much truth he would tell me. But then when that time that I'm telling you about, where we broke up for the month, when I finally let him back in, I made this decision of it's all or nothing. So it's not going to work in the bubble. So let's try it outside of the bubble. Let's do dates. Let's eat out. Let's meet friends. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And he'd kind of convinced me that, you know, that's all he wanted, that's all he'd been looking for, and that, you know, I was the one that had been judging him, and that maybe if I let my guard down, that would be it. So I truly let my guard down, and I let him into my life, and I introduced him to Ash for the first time. I brought him to the gym. We went out, we did things and stuff like that, and it was kind of nice. But I was also a little bit on edge because I knew, like, if it doesn't work, then I feel like I've been a bit of a fool, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, but I felt like that maybe I'd been judgmental all this time, and it had been my fault after all.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, I hadn't realized that he'd been manipulating me and making me feel that way until we broke up for the final time. So when it got a couple of months after we properly got back together, there were lots of, I would say, red flags that I chose to ignore, where we would maybe make a date to go to the theatre, but then last minute something would come up where he was maybe ill, or he was having family issues, or something where he'd made me feel really sorry for him or really bad for him, and he'd, you know, make me, like, he'd say, so, like, do you mind if we don't go? But he'd make a really good case as to why we didn't go, and I'd be really disappointed because it was nice to spend time with him outside of the household. And, or, you know, a lot of the time maybe he'd cancel last minute because he's tired, and he'd always make me feel sorry for him because of all the things that, you know, he told me were going on. And then just towards the end of the year last year, it was like November, there was a couple of anniversaries. So we were, was it December? I can't remember. My timeline's all off now. But there was his anniversary of him becoming sober, and he'd suggested that we have a day of fun, basically. So I said, okay, if you leave it up to me, I can plan a few things. So I planned a meal. I'd planned for us to go to the theatre because he really was interested in going to the theatre with me because he knew I loved it. And we'd sort of planned this whole day. And as it got nearer, I was already feeling like, oh, is it actually going to go ahead? And it was always a way, whenever we'd like put a date in the diary, it would be that feeling of, you know, am I going to be disappointed? You know, am I going to get a phone call the night before to say, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm ill, or something like that? And then, on that day, he came over and he was saying, oh, I'm really tired. I've been having a lot going on. And I felt really angry at that point. So he'd already asked if we could cancel the meal, which I'd like bought a voucher for. So I'd already lost out on a bit of money for that. And then when he said, oh, I'm not going to go to the theatre, like, nah, you know, and he said it in a way that was just like, yeah, as if to say, you're forcing me to do this. Like, you've booked this theatre, you're expecting me to go with you, and I'm feeling tired, you know, in that sort of attitude. And I'm like, well, it's fair enough if you're really tired and stuff, but if you're now going to tell me that you're going to leave and go home and rest, that's totally fine, but let me know, because I can get someone else to come with me. And then he sort of kicked off a little bit, and he was really angry that I would suggest such a thing. And he said, I'm going to transfer you the money now for it so that you don't lose out. And he made me feel like I was being really horrible for suggesting that he was doing it on purpose. And I think it was after that he made himself a bit more distant, and he blamed it on a lot of family things that was going on and a lot of work stresses. So it meant that I didn't hear from him a lot. And he was also studying a lot. So I can't message you because I'm studying. And I've always tried to be, because I know I've got an addictive personality, I've tried not to be one of those people who will constantly check their phone, check if a person's online. And I noticed he was online a lot on WhatsApp. I was starting to wonder if something else was going on. And then there was one time where he came to stay over, and I caught sight, he was showing me something on his WhatsApp, and as he was scrolling through, I saw there was a lot of women's names, and I thought, okay, whatever, you know, it might be to do with the restaurant that he works in, it might be anything. it could be innocent. And then there was one message that he opened and I saw something that looked like it could be a bit dodgy. And I was like, no, I'm just going crazy. You know, we've talked a lot about relationships, about our opinions on, you know, that we both agreed that open relationships could work in the long run if we were on the same page. But he always said, no, I would never want to share you with anyone. I don't want anyone else. You know, he would say, you know, that's the ultimate betrayal is if he or I were to be seeing anyone else. So I just put it to the back of my mind. But then again, he disappeared for a couple of weeks. And so the last time I saw him, he stayed over and I was just, you know, it got the better of me. And while he literally arrived and got in the shower and I thought, right, I'm going to just check your phone. And he's very old school, doesn't use a password. And I had to scroll through and the first message I saw was so inappropriate and X-rated that I was like, there's absolutely no way that this is innocent. So I scrolled through a couple more names and there was a lot of, you know, it was clear that he'd been seeing other people, put his phone away. And I made the decision then of, I'm not going to confront him now because one, I know that he'll get angry and confrontational and I'm not good in a confrontational situation. I am definitely a think about it and plan my response. Whereas I know he's an explosive, get it all out, and he's very good with words in a way that like I would just end up crying because I'm really terrible in them situations and I didn't want that. And also I knew he'd make me question my sanity as well. He'd make me question whether I'd seen it properly. So instead I made up some sort of story about, you know, oh, I need to get checked by the doctor, is it, you know, just making sure in a jokey way that there's nothing you want to tell me just in case there's any, you know, anything dodgy that will come up. And he's like, oh, how could you even suggest that? So he goes to sleep, and because in my mind I knew when I finally confront him about it, he will tell me that what I've seen is not what I thought I saw. So when he was asleep, I had a deep delve into the phone again, and I made absolute certain that I wasn't going crazy. And there was one lady in particular that he'd been seeing for months. There was many more that he'd probably maybe just seen for a night or whatever. But because I know my short-term memory isn't amazing, I just wanted to make sure that, okay, when I'm thinking about this later, I know what I've seen and I know that is it. And that was it. It was like all of a sudden a light bulb went on and I realized just how much he had been manipulating me, and that actually everything he'd ever told me about how, you know, it not necessarily about how he felt, because the way he's acted afterwards, I'll tell you about shortly. But like, how can I possibly believe anything that he's ever said? You know, he had kids from a previous relationship, and he said that he had a really bad relationship with the mother, and she's crazy and stuff. And now suddenly I'm thinking, oh, maybe she wasn't crazy. Maybe she was a totally fine, normal person. So it was that light bulb moment of, you know, actually, I don't need this stress in my life. I've tried and I should have trusted my gut. But, you know, as we say in Smash, there's no point in regrets. You know, it's an education. You always learn something from any experience you go through, whether it's hard and painful or not. And yeah, after that, we had a little bit of an argument, but I didn't tell him what I knew. And I said, I don't think that we're right for each other, and that we need some space. And with the knowledge of what I knew that he didn't know that I knew, that all the manipulation came out, all his techniques. Like, he did the usual wait 1 week before messaging me, and then all these lovely things and telling me, you always do this. This is the way you react to things. And I'm like, actually, no, this isn't the. And it was almost like a little, I can't wait to tell you that I know. And so eventually, after a little conversation, it was really, really clear that he was trying to manipulate me. I told him what I knew. And he says, oh, no, don't be silly. You know, that's ridiculous. How could you ever think that? I was like, well, the thing is, I've gone through your phone and I know, like, there's absolutely no shadow of a doubt. And so obviously he then exploded with how, trust, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't feel I don't regret looking, because it's given me that clear cut, where I've been up and down of not knowing, should I try it or not. It's okay, no, you're not worth my time and my energy. So
Yes.
a few days of up and down. He still denied it, and he still told me, as expected, are you sure you're going to believe what you think you saw? Yes, I'm sure. And at this point, I can't remember. So it would be great if I could be really vindictive and vendetta and have done screenshots and stuff like that. But I'm not. I don't. I'm not into revenge. And so finally, after a lot of conversation, I've got all of my anger, and it's not necessarily anger. I wasn't super angry. It was like I'd expected it. I told him how exactly he made me feel, and how I'll never ever want to, I never want him in my life again, because there's no need. And it's not that I'm gonna think about him every day and think, oh, what an arsehole, or anything like that. Sorry for swearing. But it's just that underline of, I don't need you in my life, and I don't need to think about you. So this is goodbye, and I'm going to block you now. So I said goodbye, and I immediately blocked him. And then that's when he started to sort of softly stalk me. So he after I blocked him on WhatsApp, and he tried to call me and text me. So I blocked him on the text from my phone, and then he started to email me. So I blocked him on that. At some point, he made up a fake Instagram account and a fake email address, and subscribed to the Smash emails, which we send every week, and posed as a person who had a very similar story to mine. And he wrote basically, where you first heard my story about this was on an email that I sent out to the Smash community as a little brief. This is what's going on in my life, and I wanted to share in case it could help anyone else. And he'd responded to that with, oh, well, I've got a similar story. And I hadn't read it, and Ash was on holiday at the time. And I just messaged Ash to say, oh, don't worry about this email. I'll read it tomorrow and respond to it properly, because it's really long. But Ash got there before me, read the email. He was like, it's him. There's no shadow of doubt. It's him. I was like, what? He wouldn't do that. And I read it, and I was like, oh, my gosh. And I think it was, he couldn't deal with the fact that he couldn't get his story across. Because up until the point that I blocked him, he was telling me lies. He was trying to manipulate me. And so he was really struggling with me not hearing, his excuses. And then I shared the full story with the Smash community a few weeks later and put it on the website. And at this point, I'd not heard a lot from him. When I put it on the website, I got a really interesting surprise. I used to use MyFitnessPal, where you track your macros when you're trying to lose weight, or when you're trying to put on muscle or anything like that. And I got a random message through that, and it was his last ditch attempt. And it was funny, because I was the day before looking at memes about someone trying to contact you through eBay or something like that. So it's been kind of funny. It's nice. It's been a way to laugh about the horrible experience. And I know, there's so many people out there that have gone through so much worse, that are maybe spending years in marriages with gaslighting, with manipulation. And I know that my story by far is nowhere near as horrific as it can be. But like I said, with Smash, we want to share our experiences to highlight that actually, no matter how much mindfulness you practice, and no matter how amazing your friends are around you, you can still, get sucked into someone else's world. And it might even be that person isn't totally aware what they're doing, or it might be that they are, but it's something that, that I don't care whether he's able to work on it or not, but I think it's probably something that he's done for a very, very long time in many, many relationships, and whether he changes or not is none of my business anymore. I think that's the short story.
I think what's very interesting about hearing you speak about this is, there's several things that, jump out at me. And one of the things is, even when you were setting out that relationship, you're not sure about it. You knew within your gut that there's something that was not right, but you kind of like just went along with it. And I think sometimes as women, we have those gut instincts and we kind of like just ignore them. And we're kind of like thinking, well, it's just me, right? And then even in the relationship, you kept on feeling like you couldn't be yourself, right? Because you referred back to your addictive personality. And for those who haven't read Sam's story, Sam was an alcoholic before, and she recovered. She stopped, she recovered. It's been over 10 years now. She hasn't been drinking, and she's into fitness. She's changed her life around, but she's very much aware of that kind of personality within her. So that kind of like helps her. But then in this case, you kind of like knew that, okay, I have an addictive personality, so I'm going to try and use a different approach in this relationship. And it's kind of like you using a different approach also made it worse or made it easier for him to do what he was doing. So at the beginning, you were not happy with the relationship anyway, and then you're walking in eggshells because you can't be yourself, right? And you're feeling like, oh, I have to withdraw. I don't want to be like this. I have to withdraw. So already within the relationship, without even going further in, you're questioning yourself. And that's what people who gaslight do. They make people question themselves.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting because it was at the very beginning of the relationship, you're already questioning yourself based on how he was towards you.
Yeah.
And I think with gaslighters, they know this because it's not just about the verbal, it's also about the actions that they portray. Because when we think about, abuse and everything else, we just think it's words, but it really isn't. It's how they behave towards you. They make you adjust within yourself, and then you start behaving like someone else. And as you share your story, that's something that I'm picking up now. I hadn't picked that up before because I know we've spoken about this before, but it's very interesting that, like, as someone who knows you and knows how bubbly you are and how carefree you are, that you would feel like you have to readjust yourself. And even at the beginning, when you were speaking about it, you did say that you're not looking for anyone to validate you. So you already know who you are. You're comfortable within yourself. But then here comes along someone who's very manipulative, who knows how to make people adjust their behavior without having to say anything. And I think people don't realize how gaslighting is intense, because people think, well, I'll be able to spot it, but you won't be able to spot it. That's a problem with it. You won't be able to spot it until it's really bad, because they get you questioning yourself and readjusting who you are without saying a word. And it's something that we've literally seen with your story, and it's really mind-blowing how someone can be so manipulative to the point that they know how to behave towards you, so that they can make you behave in a way that is out of your natural self, right? And then I find it very interesting, like within the relationship, there was the going away and then coming back. Because already that would be like setting off alarm bells. Like if you're not with someone for a week and it's not been a long-term relationship, you'd be thinking, well, let me look somewhere else, right? And I think like there's something that you said that you guys talked about, and that was like the open relationship, but you said you'd be open to it further down the line but it would be a discussion between the two of you. And I'm wondering who initiated that conversation. Was it you or him? Because I find it very interesting.
I can't remember, it was very, very early on in the relationship, when we're having, when you have all the random conversations like that. And it was when in my gut, it was not going to be a relationship that was going to be a lifetime. And this is at every stage of the relationship, I never felt like I'm going to marry this guy, I'm going to be with him forever. And so talking about open relationships was something that we were like, it would work in a scenario where for us, maybe if it wasn't something that we're gonna go for life kind of thing. I don't know. It was just random discussions. And also going back to the point of me going away, in one of the blocked messages that popped up on my phone when I realized that you have to go in and delete them, one of his reasons, like one of his things that he admitted to, was that whenever I went away, he assumed that I was seeing other guys, which I never ever was. And that's when he was seeing other people, because he just assumed that I was doing the same thing. So that was his validation for it. But at that point, I wasn't looking at his messages properly. I was just, delete.
Yeah. And I think it's very, I find it very interesting with regards to his behavior when you were away. Because he obviously, within himself, he wasn't sure about the relationship. With him, it feels like he wasn't sure about the relationship. And within him, because it's not just, I think that the point I'm trying to put across, and I think the counsellor will be able to do this a lot better, is with people who gaslight, sometimes they don't know they're doing it. And it could be they're doing it as a result of something else within them. So he already has insecurities. And within those insecurities, he wants to control the relationship. He wants to control how the relationship goes. And in controlling how the relationship goes, when you're away, even when you're not doing anything, he wants to control what he thinks you're doing. So he wants to be doing it too. So he feels like, well, I'm doing it too because she's doing it too. And within the whole narrative, with him, it makes him feel like he's in control. And then when you come back, because of his guilt, he's making you feel like you're the one not putting enough effort in the relationship. So you have to go out of your way to be a lot nicer. You have to go out of your way to do something that you don't even really want to do, because at the beginning you're feeling like, okay, I have an addictive personality, but I don't really want to make it be all about, I don't want to be in his space so much. But then he's already making you feel like you're walking in eggshells, and then you have to switch up again because he's making you feel uncomfortable within the relationship. And I find it really bizarre that, you know, within all of that, how they can keep switching and how they can keep manipulating the situation to suit themselves. Right? Because at the beginning, he doesn't want there to be too much. Like, obviously, it's only the two of you, you spend time together. And there's no outside forces. So he's giving this, well, it's you and me, and we're getting to know each other. And then after that, he's giving that, well, actually, I want you to put a lot more effort towards this. Even though I'm cheating, I want you to put more effort. I want you to prove to me that I should be faithful to you. And it's just so bizarre, like, watching the whole thing. And I'm so glad you survived, because some women clearly don't. You know, they come out really scarred. And looking back at this, you know, as we wind up, because I would like to bring in the counsellor as well. How you know, looking back at how you overcame, what have you learned about yourself?
So the number one thing is to trust my gut, for sure. I am a very reflective person, and I do a lot of writing. And a lot of the time throughout the relationship, when I'd write about, you know, how I feel, a lot of the time it would be clear that actually what I'm doing with Smash and the career side of it was more important to me than what was going on in the relationship. So I try and reflect a lot more. So I kind of learned that to take more note of what I've been reflecting, to talk to friends more as well, because there were certain things, like when he maybe cancelled with the theatre and things like that, that I was almost making excuses for him before. So I would talk, if I was telling Ash, for example, I'd tell him in a way to say, like, oh, so this really bad thing happened to him, and so we didn't end up going, rather than I'm really annoyed that we didn't go and it was really frustrating. So I'd always lead with making excuses for him than, you know, telling him how I actually felt. And that was something that Ash said to me afterwards, is never hide anything from me. And I'm like, I know. So I've learned to to always trust my instincts. I think she's gone. I don't know if I'm still live. But if you are still watching, smashlondon.co.uk, you can find out more. You disappeared.
No, I'm still here. Sorry. It kind of like disappeared for a minute there. Yes, but I'm still here. So I'd like you to do a quick plug-in for Smash London, and then I'll bring on the next guest.
Awesome. So smashlondon.co.uk is our website, and we've got our Instagram, which is at Smash London. We do 4 classes online a week, and like Harriet said, we do them for donations only. So we know a lot of people have been affected by COVID-19. So if you're struggling, you can still join us. We do once every 2 weeks, we do a Smash Extra, which is where we do less music and more instruction and adaptations, so that if you are a little bit nervous, that's a good one to start with. But next week we've got a Pride special, so we've got something different every single day, and the most up-to-date information of that will be on our Instagram, and we're going to be updating our website as well. So just have a look. There's been a couple of posts on our Instagram recently of Get to Know Sam and Get to Know Ash, so you can get to know us. And if you've ever got any questions, you can ask us. I also do a class for pregnancy. So for pregnant, postnatal ladies, I'm doing that online as well. And we're also doing small group personal training outside in Islington in July. That's all the plugging I can think of at the moment.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you so much as well for having
and for sharing your story.
No problem at all. And
Definitely.
like I said, well, I know that in the grand scheme of things, it was a very short amount of time for me. But if anyone can get any little bit of solace from that, to think about and reflect on their own relationships, then that'd be amazing.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Yay! So I'm going to have thank you. So next on, I'm going to have Simone, and Simone is a counselor. So I'm just waiting for her to kind of like jump on. I don't know if she can hear me. Simone, if you can hear me, please jump on. I'm kind of like trying to sort out my internet because it's freezing a little bit. So I'm going to have Simone on next, and she's going to kind of like talk to us about gaslighting more from a professional point of view, because with gaslighting, one of the things is it's not just women who experience it, men also experience it, and it's good to kind of like have a full understanding of what it is, how to deal with it, and how to kind of like address it, and kind of like just know how to really look after ourselves even after, because sometimes we don't realize how these relationships can take a toll in our lives. So yeah, here is Simone. I'm just going to bring her on now. Hi, Simone.
Harriet, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for making time to join us. So this is Simone, amazing woman. I love her so much because she just radiates love and peace. And so I'm just going to ask Simone to tell us a bit about herself before we continue, so that you can hear a little bit about herself, because as you know, this is all about sharing stories and everything. So Simone's going to tell us about herself and what she does. And then I am going to come back on and we can go on to the rest of the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harriet. It was fascinating to listen to the story. So thank you so much, Sam, for just your vulnerability and your courage in sharing your story. So as Harriet said, my name is Simone, and I'm a registered counsellor by profession, a connection coach at heart. So when I'm not doing counselling with individuals and couples, you'll probably find me sitting with a cup of coffee. I'm a total coffeeholic. I'm in a long-term relationship with it. And I am usually telling stories. So either I'm writing a blog, or I'll be recording a podcast, doing a webinar. I have a small group of ladies that meet in something called Coffee with a Counsellor. And I'm also married to my high school sweetheart. So we are celebrating 2 years coming up this year. So that's a little bit about who I am. What more do you want to know, Harriet?
Thank you so much. Sorry about this, guys. I've been trying to adjust my seat, and then my laptop, somehow the plug came off, and then it's telling me I've got 5% left, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, help me. Because I've just got some Simone on now, so I'm just going to adjust myself a bit. So I'm kind of like
Are you
straight.
sorted?
Yeah, I'm sorted.
Oh, don't worry, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what was happening behind the scenes, and that's why I was hiding myself, because I was trying to sort this thing out. My computer, oh my goodness, it just gave me 5 minutes, and I was thinking, if I don't do this now, then we're not going to be able to have this conversation. So I'm a bit sweaty because of all of that. But thank you so much. This is the reality of being live, right?
That's exactly, it's the real.
Things happening, and you have to kind of like recover.
Exactly.
So this is how I met Simone. We were on the same panel, Women in Leadership panel, and I just literally fell in love with her. I haven't met her physically yet because she's in South Africa, and I am so happy because Her Story Matters is international. We bring women from all over, and like I said, she's really amazing. She done her. Is it 1 year? You did it in Cambridge, so you're very open to different nationalities, and I think that's what really makes a great counselor, because you have to be able to understand different topics and kind of like just different, what happens in different countries, because it's so important to be in the know and be able to deal with the diverse issues that are out there. So Simone, you've had some story, and some story is a lot, right? I know, like, she's saying that there's some people who have it worse, which I totally believe. But I also feel like it just doesn't happen in kind of like intimate relationships. It's something that actually happens at work as well. So tell us the effects of gaslighting and how you would actually know that this is something that you're going through.
Yeah, thank you, Harriet. So you're right. I think she described it so beautifully for us. I mean, it was almost that checklist, unfortunately, textbook example of what gaslighting is like.
Wow.
And so I really, really wanted to honor her courage in sharing her story. So just to kind of reiterate, you did mention it at the beginning, gaslighting is a sense of psychological abuse. It's very manipulative, using kind of manipulative techniques. And all of it ultimately is about power and about control. So as you were able to recognize, it's not just the use of, kind of physical abuse. It's very, it's almost an undercurrent that comes through the relationship and seeps into every aspect. Financially, there's often a hold on the victim. Socially, that sense of isolation and bubbling that, as Sam was talking about, they were very much a little unit, a bubble. In terms of sexually, often that's used as a way to control the victim, sometimes even through something like birth control if it's a woman. And the victim might fall pregnant, she might have a child, and then there's that kind of hold over her through the use of the children. So it really fits into every aspect of the victim's life. And the effects of it are destructive and quite enormous. I mean, to hear how far Sam has come and just really has turned her story from a space of being a victim very much into a victory story is incredible. But it really is a journey, and I think that it'll be a lifelong process for her to heal the effects. The fundamental effect that comes from being in a relationship of gaslighting is really a breakdown of self-esteem and your sense of self or perception of self. She said, I thought I was crazy. And that's exactly what happens, is you end up thinking that you're mad. And you're told repetitively and constantly and consistently that you are crazy in either overt ways or very, very subtle undercurrent ways, unfortunately. And so this is such a sensitive topic, and I really want to be very sensitive to people who are experiencing this. And so ultimately the effect really is around shame and blame. So victims and please mistake me, sometimes I might say women, because predominantly it is women who find themselves in this relationship, but I'm not excluding men at all. The term came from a movie from the 1940s. I'm sure people might have heard of it, and it's many, many different renditions now. We've got Enough with Jennifer Lopez, and quite a recent one was something called The Invisible Man. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or seen it. But it fundamentally talks about this dynamic of gaslighting. What I want to really point out, though, is in the movies, there's often the use of somebody to rescue the victim from that space. Often the women are in a privileged position to be able to financially support themselves and enable them to leave the space. But the reality is that's not what women or victims find themselves in real life. Very often they are totally isolated from all other parts of their lives and feel very much like they don't have anyone to turn to. So the major effects are around that sense of loss of self, a lot of shame, and an intense amount of codependency that develops through that relationship that needs to be healed post the relationship. Unfortunately, many people who leave the relationship and are able to rescue themselves, they don't often have somebody else to rely on, have to deal.
Oops, I think we lost her there for a bit. There you go. Welcome back. The joys of going live, huh? I can't hear you. I think we've lost your sound. As Simone is fixing her sound, can we hear you now? It could be I still can't hear you. It's very weird. So I'll let her fix her sound as I just keep talking about what Simone was saying. So basically she was talking about, okay, she's coming back in. She's coming back in. So she was talking about gaslighting more from a professional point of view. And she's explaining that it's not just women who go through it, men also go through it. And it is something that is very detrimental to someone's mental health as well. Can we hear you? Your voice is gone. Your sound is completely gone. So I can see you, but I can't hear you. So it could be because I know I've had people on before, and sometimes the sound, it's unmuted now. Can you speak? Still cannot hear you. It's very weird. Oh my goodness. And it's something that's really helpful. It would help other people. Yeah. So basically, as she was talking about the different people who've gone through it, and she's talked about different movies even of late. We're going to put the movies underneath as well, so that you're going to be able to go and look them up if you want to, and kind of like just really learn more about gaslighting, because it's more popular than we realize. As I was doing so much of the research, I found that dictators actually do this a lot, narcissists do this a lot, cult leaders do this a lot. So it's not something that a particular kind of people do. It's something that is very, very popular, and it's good to be able to see it so that we can avoid being manipulated and being put in places and positions that are not really for our highest good. Can you just speak so I can hear? So I can see if I can hear you. Still cannot hear you. It's very weird. It's very, very weird. I can hear you
Are you
now.
able to hear me? There we go.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey,
Sorry,
welcome
I
back.
don't know what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Weird day today. Yeah. So as you were saying.
Yes. Where was I? Now I've got to kind of go backwards. So I was just talking around the effects of it and how it very much seeps into all aspects of who they are, and that people victims who leave these relationships are going to experience a mixture of emotions that need to be processed and regulated. So there will be a sense of relief, but there may very well be a sense of guilt and also a sense of feeling even grief for the end of the relationship. Because as we could see with Sam, there were parts of it that she enjoyed, and there were parts of it that were very destructive. And that dynamic is what is very dangerous, is that actually there is a part to the relationship that is lovely and kind and loving. And so they grieve often the loss of those parts of the person. And there's often that blame and shame that settles. And so what she's worked so hard on is her self-esteem, and really working on that sense of who she is, and her exercise and fitness has given her a real sense of identity. And I'm so encouraged by that as well.
Yeah. So we've seen it in the dynamic of relationship. How can we identify it or kind of like handle it in a work environment?
Yeah. At work, it's really interesting because there is definitely an aspect of it that feeds through, and it's very pervasive. The way that it often will show up is something like being told that you did something when you didn't do it, that instructions might have been given to you when you are very sure that it didn't, a way of kind of shaming you both publicly and privately. So there's this kind of undercurrent in that power dynamic, and it leaves you feeling as if you are going crazy, that you're never good enough in that space. So my encouragement in those spaces, I suppose the hopefulness is that different to a romantic space where it's much harder to often leave that space, a workspace, my encouragement is to try and really exit from that space as much as you can, finding a new position. Obviously, that feeds into your financial aspects of who we are. But in that context, it's helpful for people to either have instructions written down to them rather than relying on verbal instructions. So if you start feeling it might be happening, ensure that you keep a very good record of all interactions that are happening with that person that you think it's, you're feeling that with, as well as relying a lot more on something like written communication, so that there is a record as well as proof of those exchanges so that you don't feel crazy.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And this is when you can just use wisdom and say, can you please send me an email outlining exactly what you want me to do so that I don't forget? So you make it sound like, so I don't forget, but I really want you to write it down. I think that's an interesting way of having to deal with it. So what are the psychological effects of gaslighting? I know you've spoken about the withdrawal symptoms and feeling like you're going crazy, but what other psychological effects are there?
So the main one that I think comes through quite strongly, obviously the first one is the self-esteem, but an aspect of that is really around the codependency. And that's probably the most unhealthy aspect of that relationship. It's a sense that you believe on a very deep level that you need this relationship effectively to survive. So without this relationship, I'm nothing. I need this relationship to validate who I am as a person. And because they often isolate the victim from any kind of other relationship, you don't often get that mirroring from other relationships that you are great or worthwhile, that you are enough. And so you really rely so much on this relationship. So the process of healing that sense of codependency is very important. So a recommendation that I would give for that is obviously very much seeking that sense of professional assistance in it. It is not something that you can completely heal on your own. There needs to be a sense of reflection or mirroring. And there's just kind of 4 key things that I would recommend. So the first thing would be, once you leave a relationship like that, and the deepest effect of that being codependency, is to untangle yourself from other people. And in that, there's this kind of enmeshment of who you are with who they are. And you struggle to see yourself as separate from that relationship. And how you untangle yourself is by setting some clearer boundaries. What am I okay with? What am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? And effectively being able to own that you can only be responsible for yourself. You cannot assume responsibility for what the adult in the relationship did to you. That is their fault. That is not your fault. And I really want to affirm that for people who are finding themselves in these relationships, that it's not your fault. The second thing that you can do is really that sense of owning your part. So firstly, untangle from that person, and then secondly, own your part. And what I mean by that is really, how can I empower myself again? With Sam through her fitness, really getting to that sense of, what can I do for me again? What did I enjoy doing? If you can, start participating in some activities that you used to love or that you still love, and regain that identity. And that really brings me to the third part, which is to get to know yourself again. So a sense of being able to actually get to know who you are, separate from this person. Often you become quite acquainted with all the negative beliefs and the negative aspects of who you are. And so it's so important to really look at, how do I speak about myself? How do I allow others to speak about me as well in my relationships? So explore your interests. What did you enjoy? And I'm very mindful of the powerful connection between our mind, body, and soul. So leaving a space like that is really about not just healing the body from whatever physical effects it might have had, but also healing the mind and the soul, the negative beliefs that you've been ingrained to believe. I'm not enough. I'm crazy. It's all my fault, And then really healing the soul by getting into that connection with your body again. Yoga, mindfulness, relationship with God, whatever your belief systems are, really trying to get back into that soulfulness aspect. And then finally, actually loving yourself. Who am I? Who was I created to be? And really feeling that sense of love towards yourself, as if treating yourself as the loved one, effectively, in the most simple terms.
Yes, it's very interesting listening to this, because as you were talking, I was just thinking about my life. And I think I've been in a friendship where there was a lot of gaslighting, but I didn't realize it then. But it went off, it went on for quite some time. I think it was about 2 or 3 years. And as you were talking, I realized how empty I felt, even though I knew the relationship was not right. Even when I left the relationship, there was that emptiness, and there was that grieving, because it's so weird. It's like someone has died. Literally, you're having to grieve that person. And I think the important thing to remember as well, and this is what I did, is I didn't have communication with that person at all. So I cut off all communications, because I knew that I was not strong enough to choose me at that time. So, and because I knew I wasn't strong enough to choose me, if I was on the call, what I did was just cut off all communications, and I don't want to speak to you ever again. So the focus was on myself. And I think people who are going through that should not feel bad for choosing themselves and deciding, this is what I want to do for myself. I'm choosing myself over everyone else, and it's about me. And also to remember that it does take time, because I think it took me some years to get over that. It does take time, because when you keep unfolding different layers, what you realize is you don't know how bad the damage was. So it's only until you start healing that you realize, oh my goodness, so this issue touched this part of my life. So I need to address this part of my life. And I didn't even know that was gaslighting actually at that time. And you need to recognize that it will take time. You have to be patient with yourself. And I think at that time as well, people are very vulnerable, because you're grieving over one relationship. And if you don't have something to kind of like someone who is more healthy to connect to, you might find yourself kind of like finding more relationships which sabotage you. And I think in Sam's case, very lucky to have Ash, who she works with, because now there's this really lovely relationship and friendship that they have, which has helped her stay grounded, whether she recognizes it or not. It actually helps her to stay grounded as much as working together. And I think it's very interesting that I never really connected it until now, just listening to what you're saying about recovery and kind of like the relationships that I've had before. So I think this is be one of those lives that people would have to listen to and kind of like really reflect, because I think in one lifetime or another, you have gone through relationships, or you've been at work where there was that kind of atmosphere and kind of like relationships, whether it's your boss or whether it's not. Because I think in the past I've had bosses that have been like, but I asked you to do this, and you're like, actually, I'm sure you didn't ask me to do this. And because it was in retail then, and you're thinking, actually, did you ask me to do it? And because there's no emails, retail, right? And it's kind of like their word against your word. So I told you to do it. Okay, you didn't do it. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me go and do it now. So it's a very frustrating relationship. I was working in retail when I was in uni, and that's kind of like something else that you actually experience where you have that domineering or managers who just want to make you feel like I am in charge and you're not. So have you got anything else that you'd like to share with us before you dash off? I know you have to prepare for your next meeting, which I am very grateful you were able to slot us in.
Absolutely. This is such a special platform. I really, really want to honor you, Harriet, for just allowing people to share their stories. These are uncomfortable stories, but that's what makes them so important to share, you know, is because they really get to the real, and people need to hear these stories. So thank you for creating this platform. I think something you're speaking about so importantly about your experience is really about breaking that cycle of abuse, because, you know, as something that I think Sam was alluding to as well, is that it becomes a way of being in relationship with others. And if we're not careful, we replicate those same patterns again and again, which is why we need to seek professional help to identify, why did I find myself perhaps in this pattern, and how can I ensure I don't find it again? And really empowering ourselves in that. That's that kind of owning your part, not for it happening, but really, how can I ensure that I don't get treated like this again? And I think that there's something really powerful about that kind of shift in mentality. And, you know, something that Sam spoke about in her learning was around just trusting her intuition. And I really want to affirm that, because something I find so important about that is that the warning signs were probably there all along, but we didn't like them, we didn't want to see them, and the red flags were there. And I think that it is important, and, you know, perhaps I can just kind of touch on the red flags, that people who are maybe experiencing this or aren't sure, there's a couple of questions that might be helpful for them just to go through, you know, in their own time and mindfully think, is this happening to me? And if that is, how they can seek out assistance as quickly as possible. So just some of the ones that kind of came through for me were that kind of pull-push dynamic that Sam was also describing, you know, that kind of love-hate. You know, you give a little and they pull away and makes you want to, you know, push in even more. Last-minute cancellations, something always comes up. A sense of discrediting you, so convincing you that what you're saying isn't true. Withholding from you in some way, so they might pretend that they don't understand what you're talking about. Trivializing what you're saying, so a sense of, you know, your thoughts don't matter, you're crazy, that didn't happen. Countering everything you say, they come in with the opposite of that. And stonewalling, which is where they often refuse to just engage with you in any way. So those are kind of the red flags. Some things that kind of phrases that are quite typical in these relationships might be something like, you're making that up. I only do it because I love you. It didn't happen that way. You're too sensitive. You're too ... And you can fill in, you know, the blank. You didn't see me there. I was never there. You didn't read that message. You're crazy. It's all in your head. I don't know what you're talking about. Those are really key phrases that people who are, you know, gaslighters often use. And some questions that I think might be helpful for people in relationships, in their workspaces, as you said, even in their friendships, and even in their parent-child relationships, which is very scary in itself, is to ask things like, does my partner or does this person make me question my thoughts or my experience of things? Do I catch them out in lies all the time and make me think that I'm crazy? Do they make me feel bad about myself, about who I am, about the things that I do? Is their criticism very pervasive and repetitive? So is it the same thing over and over again, and it's really breaking me down? And there was something that I kind of wanted to touch on that came from a book. It's a fascinating book for people who are really interested in learning more about this topic. And I think it's so important for us to keep talking about it. The book is called How to Successfully Handle Gaslighting and Stop Psychological Bullying. And it's by Preston Nee. And she talks about 7 stages. And this is what I found so fascinating about gaslighting, is that it doesn't start out extreme. It's very gradual and incremental. So what Sam described by the end was really the extreme version, but the warning signs were were much subtler and a lot more covert in the beginning. So it starts out with something like lying or exaggerating things. There's something wrong. It's very subtle. I prefer if you did. That kind of language. I like it more when you. It's very subtle. And then it starts to become a lot more repetitive. So it's things that really, it starts to dominate the conversations and the relationship. The third thing is that it starts to escalate. So when you try and challenge them on it, they often feel quite defensive and they really begin to escalate that. Things like, you're cheating on me, you don't love me. It starts to become a lot more fiery. The fourth thing is they start wearing you down. So this becomes an experience of tiring you out. You experience that of feeling tired, burdened. Sam spoke about always having to check in with her boyfriend when she went out. That's a tiring experience. Yes. The fifth stage is that in this codependent relationship, they start to isolate you from all other relationships. You stay indoors, you don't really do anything with anybody else. They start finding fault, possibly with your mom or your other relationships or friendships. Number 6 is they start giving you that false hope, that sense of, I'll change, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I must have been having a bad day. And they make you believe that you're crazy. And then finally it starts to get to that. So exactly.
I don't know how many people have had that. I'm sorry, I'm going to change. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Hey, that's the favorite. And then that final stage is really where there's that sense of domination and control in all aspects of your life. So that's just to kind of indicate to people that it is something that builds up and it's incremental, and to really trust those warning signs that come in. Check in with your body. How is this making me feel when they say this or do this? And honor that. Honor yourself in that space.
You've actually shared quite a lot. And one of the things I'm going to do as well is I'm going to have to watch this back again to kind of like just really go through that, because you can never be too careful, because they're lacking in different places, especially for people who are entrepreneurs. You never know who you might come across. I mean, when you're in an establishment, it's a lot easier to trail it and track it and say, well, actually, you can do this because there's no email. But when you're dealing with different people, it's very, as you say, it's quite subtle, and you just never know where it might come from. And it's just really good to have that awareness at the back of our minds, especially if it's something that you've gone through already before, because you're a lot more vulnerable as you're going through that, the healing experience. Is it okay for people to email you? Because we're going to put your email details as well, so people can email you if they want to. If you want to get in touch with Simone, please don't bombard her with emails. Just send her emails about, stuff that she's a busy woman. Just send her stuff, questions you'd like to discuss. Don't send trivial stuff, please, because I know sometimes people just inundate people with emails, and it's just, people can't really go through all of that. I think you're on Facebook as well, right? They can find you on Facebook because your name is there. We're going to put her Facebook details, because her counseling services is Rooted in Love Counseling, and her email is info@rootedinlove.co.za. We're going to put that information there as well, so you'll be able to contact her and kind of like just get the conversation going. Or if you need a counselor, I assure you, she's really amazing. You can get in touch with her. She does long distance as well. It doesn't matter which country you're in. She just doesn't deal with women issues. She also deals with couple counseling. So for all you married people out there, she deals with marriage counseling, couples, relationships, just plugging in that in, because sometimes people don't have a full understanding of the range of services that someone might offer. So Simone, I just want to really thank you so much for making time to come and talk to us about this, because it's such an important topic. Many people have gone through it without realizing it. They've probably escaped. Some of them haven't. And I think it's something that we still need to think about a lot more, just to create awareness. So I want to thank you for coming on and making time for this, because it was kind of like short notice as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'd be so happy for people to contact me. I do online sessions for those that are not living in South Africa, but I'm so open to just discussing this more. There's such a need. So thank you for creating this platform. And you are welcome to find out more about what I do on Instagram and Facebook, where I see individuals and couples. And I love this work and I'm really passionate about it. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it. Anytime I get to talk about what I love is a great day. So I'll always make time for it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So before we go off, I just want to thank you, Grace, for tuning in. Thank you, Lillian, so much for tuning in. And I hope you're having a good day. Thank you so much, Robert, for your support. It means so much. I grew up with him. We're not the same age, but we come from way back. And he's very supportive of women issues as well. He's really fantastic. Thank you to Ashley for joining in. Thank you so much, Eva. Eva from the previous session that you watched, she actually tuned in and she said hello. Thank you so much, Eva, for tuning in as well. And thank you so much, everyone, for sharing the video and for letting other people know about it. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and please share this video. Share it, please. Take care. Bye.
Bye.